As of this recording that I'm doing Thursday morning, a whole lot has changed since I completed my original call to worship message earlier in the week. You are hearing this on Sunday, so who knows what has transpired since Thursday. Although I am hopeful that things have not gotten any worse at the direction of a reckless and dangerous leader, I have decided to send you a new message considering what has transpired with the storming of the Capitol after a riot from a mob and a not-so-bloodless coup within our sacred Capitol walls. This awful day of January 6th clearly eclipsed any other events of the day that might otherwise have come to us by our various news outlets. Most notably, these may have included the news of the narrow victory of both senatorial candidates in Georgia, and quite possibly some sort of speech from John Ossoff, and further stories and commentary on recent incidents of oppression by the marginalized, to say nothing of the record-breaking numbers of sickness and death of the pandemic, didn't even get a mention today, as well as the important appointment by Joe Biden of Merrick Garland as his Attorney General. Or even the fairly predictable weather report inviting us to get outdoors for a walk on this sunny day if we were not otherwise so glued to the TV. And, like many of you, I can't help but wonder what would have likely transpired if this angry mob had included people of color instead of the mostly white supremacists encouraged to perform illegal and violent acts under the direction and leadership of their dictator, our American president. This was no protest, folks. This was unlawful. This was sedition. How many more lives would have been lost if the police and National Guard were overseeing even a peaceful march consisting of Black Lives Matter movement, for example? I had hoped that my message to you this morning would be uplifting and hopeful. And even though some of it was my own story, my desire was that it would be as important to you just as much as it was to me, something our friends and those in our beloved congregation would resonate to. But I have put this one aside for another time in order to address what many have characterized as surreal and unprecedented, never having witnessed in their lifetime or even in American history, even its most dangerous moments. So, where is the hope? A song has been running through my head, one of my favorites, written and performed by Paul Simon. Well, actually, it had its origins in Bach, Tchaikovsky, and liturgical church hymns, but the words and interpretation are all his. It goes like this. We came on a ship they called the Mayflower. We came on a ship that sailed the moon. We came in the age's most uncertain hour and sing an American tune. So my hope and belief is this, that although our country has undergone other crises by foreign and now domestic terrorists, democracy has and will prevail. The inherent worth and dignity of human beings has risen above the selfish, self-centered, and greedy who are in our nation, even in this uncertain time. May it be so.
Good morning. It is so good to be with you. We've lit our chalice this morning in honor of the new year. If you have a chalice at home, you're invited to light it at this time. May its bright flame guide us on our quest for truth. May its gentle warmth remind us of the bonds of love which connect us. May its beautiful light give us hope as we face the challenges before us. Amen.
rejoice and come in. Enter, rejoice and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice and come in. Open your ears to the song. Open your ears to the song. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice and come in. Open your hearts, everyone. Open your hearts, everyone. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice and come in. Don't be afraid of some change. Don't be afraid of some change. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice and come in. Enter, rejoice and come in. Enter, rejoice and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice and come in.
Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Community Church of Santa Monica. I'm Natalie Kahn, your worship associate. The Reverend Jeremiah Kalendae, who serves this congregation as its developmental minister, and our team of worship associates are delighted to be joining with you this morning in our online sanctuary. If you are new to our community, please know that while our building is closed, we are still here, and there are many ways to learn more about us and become involved. We offer a multitude of programs to serve the needs of our congregation and to be of service to the larger world, offering broad religious and personal education for youth as well as for people of all ages, in addition to serving as a pillar of community activism in our Santa Monica and West LA neighborhoods. If you're interested in learning more, please join us for our virtual visitor meetup after the service. Unitarian Universalism is not defined by creed or dogma, but is guided by principles that affirm the worth and dignity of every person and encourage an individual search for truth and meaning. We honor the wonder of existence and believe that we are all connected to each other and to the interdependent web of life. Our beliefs are drawn from scripture and science, nature and philosophy, personal experience, and ancient tradition. We are an open, affirming, and welcoming congregation. We are diverse in background, social locations, gender identities, ethnicities, sexual orientations, spiritualities, and philosophies of life. We are united in our desire to create a diverse, beloved community, to live the principles of our faith, and to serve the wider world. As we begin this morning, we want to acknowledge that our church building and the homes of most of our members are on traditional, ancestral, and unceded land of the Tongva Indian people who lived here and cared for this land for thousands of years. This land was stolen from the Tongva by colonial settlers. We recognize and mourn the often deadly harm inflicted on the indigenous people of this country. We lift up their grace, resilience, and relationship with these sacred lands. Our Director of Religious Education, Cleo Anderson, would like to extend an invitation for people of all ages to sign up for our various classes and programs. We have many open spots for youth in our virtual RE classes and hangouts, and there are a number of lifelong learning opportunities available to people of all ages. please see our website or contact Cleo for more information. Join us after the service for our virtual coffee hour on Zoom with a number of breakout room options with different discussion topics, conversations, and opportunities to get to know one another more deeply. Links will be posted below as well as in our UUSM Facebook group. In these uncertain times, you may wish to consider now more than ever to join us today at the conclusion of this service. For more information about our activities and ways to get involved, please visit our website at uusm.org or our online newsletter at news.uusm.org. You may also want to sign up for our weekly e-newsletter on our website.
El amor es la enseñanza de esta iglesia.
Love is the doctrine of this church.
Buscar la verdad es su sacramento y el servicio es la oración.
The quest for truth is its sacrament and service is its prayer.
Vivir juntos en paz.
To dwell together in peace.
Buscar el conocimiento en la libertad.
To seek knowledge in freedom.
Servir a la humanidad en comunión.
To serve humankind in fellowship.
Así es como convenimos unos a otros.
Thus do we covenant with each other.
From all that dwell below the skies, let songs of hope and faith arise. Let peace, goodwill on earth be sung through every land by every tongue.
Good morning. So first things first, many of you last week were like, hey, what happened to what happened to your other Nook background? I assure you, Lizzie will return. She just needed a little vacation. So now we have Victoria for a while until Lizzie can make her grand return. But I will let my background know that she is sorely missed. But on to today. So we're going to talk about changes and different things. So a lot of things have changed in the world, right? Over the course of the last almost year. But not all of them have been bad or hard. A lot of them have, but not all of them. Christmas, for instance. Last year at Christmas time, a lot of you were wearing shiny shoes and ties and staying up way past your bedtime, all to come to church. And you had a lot of fun, but it was a lot of work too. This year, you got all the best parts of Christmas service in your pajamas. That's a pretty interesting change, right? Or school. School is super fun, and you definitely are missing your friends, which is super, super valid. I miss seeing my friends too. But you don't have to wear shoes when you go to school online. Also a change. You know, even birthdays, sometimes on your birthday, especially if you have a weekday birthday, it can be really hard to get your friends together, right? Zoom birthdays, on the other hand, you could have 50 people at your birthday. It's pretty wild, right? Or movies. So you can't go to the movies. And I definitely miss butter popcorn. But your best friend who lives in Australia, or your cousin who lives in Idaho, you all can click a magic button and watch the exact same movie together at the same time and talk about it. Now that we couldn't do before. But think about other things that are maybe different. You can't go to the library physically, but so many books are now digital and online because of that. There are a lot more documentaries. So documentaries are like textbooks without the reading part. I would say watch a lot of documentaries and take advantage of that change. I mean, honestly, you'd be surprised at the information you get from documentary that just pops more than a book does sometimes. So all in all, this year's been pretty wild and pretty tough and all around odd. But so many things are good different that I think it's safe to say we can probably count on a few more good different things this year. So this week, ask your parents or your grown-up or your older sibling or your younger sibling or your grandparents what's something that's good different about the past year, and tell them what you think is good different, and maybe have a big old conversation or a couple small conversations about what's good different. And that's it for today.
Open my heart to all that I seek. Let me be part of the love you give. Open my heart to all that I seek. Let me be part of the love you give. Let me be part of the love you give.
We enter into our time for mindfulness and prayer and silent meditation. This is a time we make in each service for spiritual deepening, contemplation, and practicing spiritual disciplines together as a liberal faith community. You're invited during this portion of the service to sit quietly and comfortably and perhaps light a candle if you have not already, and connect with the stillness and the serenity within through an awareness of the movement of your breath and the beating of your heart. This is a time to be present to yourself as you also expand your mindfulness and the circle of compassion to embrace community and beyond. Our beloved music director, Sonder, and his partner, David, are presently ill, and we wish them wellness and healing, and we hold them in the light of beloved community this morning. Julia Barnett's mother, Suzanne Hamilton, recently made it through an asymptomatic bout with COVID-19 in quarantine, for which we are all thankful. Her memory care home, however, here in Los Angeles is having an unfortunate COVID-19 outbreak, and she would appreciate well wishes for everyone living and working there. Let us hold them in the light of beloved community this morning. Please join me for moments of prayer and mindfulness. O Spirit of life, of love, of being, we gather together as people of a liberal, generous, and expansive faith, one of the opened mind, the opened heart, and the helping hand. In the midst of our broken world and our own failings, in the midst of a nation besieged by its unhealed wounds of racial injustices and oppressions of all kind, in the midst of a pandemic in which we have grown weary and which has shaken many of us to the core, may we find an inner resolve and determination to care for ourselves and others with an unbounded compassion, a tender gentleness, and an undeterred love. May we remember to make time for rest and play, and for finding beauty and joy to feed our spirits in this difficult time. And may we hold close to our hearts and find inspiration in all those who continue the work of service, of healing, of parenting, of teaching, of mentoring, and of caring. Despite all of the obstacles, the exhaustion, and the loss, may we continue to lift up our liberal religious values, the principles of our faith, and the traditions that have been passed on to us, to our badly hurting world. As we embark upon this new year with faith, with hope, and with love. For these and the prayers of our hearts, let us meditate now for a few minutes of stillness and quiet. I will ring the singing bowl to begin and end our time for silent meditation. 2021 has arrived, and with it, sedition, treason, and an assault on our nation's capital. We witnessed mobs of insurrection being incited to attack a joint session of Congress as they were counting the Electoral College votes, a constitutional process fundamental to the practice of democracy in this country. Our fifth Unitarian Universalist principle calls us to affirm, promote, and by extension, safeguard the use of democratic processes in society at large. We are outraged at this attack on our country, on the elected representatives of the people of this nation, and on our democratic institutions. We were horrified as we watched throngs of insurrectionists overwhelm security perimeters, sometimes with the apparent complicity of some security forces, engage in hand-to-hand combat with these officers, and force their way into the meeting places of the people's representatives. Many of us wondered how the oldest seat of liberty and the practice of democracy could be so quickly overthrown by invading domestic terrorists. We saw members of Congress huddle for shelter behind chairs in the House gallery as others drew guns and sought to protect them from those forcing their way into the House chamber. Television screens brought us scenes of senators being evacuated through underground tunnels, while others sought safety in undisclosed locations. Minute after minute, and then hour after hour, we waited for reinforcements to protect the people in the Capitol building, but none arrived. Instead, we saw people occupy offices of elected officials, steal and destroy property of the nation, put our national security at risk, and desecrate our democratic institutions. Now, although as a pastor who is well acquainted with the human condition and often prepared for a multitude of contingencies in human affairs, I never imagined I would witness scenes like this unfold in the nation's capital. It is a disgrace, an embarrassment, and most importantly, a warning to free people everywhere. What we witnessed was the demonic power of white supremacy to destabilize, assault, and terrorize everything we hold dear. If anyone has doubted the power of white supremacy to threaten all life as we know it, I hope the events of January 6, 2021 put those doubts to rest. Now, the Black Lives Matter protests began with the now famous hashtag that helped to organize a decentralized and organic anti-racist movement in 2013, following the acquittal of George Zimmerman in the killing of Trayvon Martin a year earlier. Students walked out of schools and thousands gathered at rallies across the country. A year later, in November and December of 2014, protests erupted across the country following officers killing Michael Brown and Eric Garner, and juries deciding not to indict the officers responsible for their deaths. These protests brought national attention to the Black Lives Matter movement. Last year, we experienced a third and the largest wave of this movement as it swept across this nation. It's estimated that between 15 and 26 million people joined in last year's protests. I was on the front lines of the protests with many of my Unitarian Universalist and progressive Christian colleagues in Oakland, Berkeley, and San Francisco in 2014, and again in the midst of the pandemic, but without other members of the clergy present in Santa Monica and Hollywood last year. I must say, I am struck by the contrast in how the lethal forces of the state organized and responded to largely peaceful protests demanding racial justice in 2014 and 2020, and how those very same lethal forces of the state organized and responded to white supremacists, fascists, neo-Nazis, conspiracy theorists, and other insurrectionists who attempted to overthrow the United States government as Congress was meeting in a joint session to count the votes, electing the next president and vice president of the United States. Of course, one thing that's different this year is the first woman who happens to be an African and Asian American is being elected to the second highest office in the nation. The past 2 centuries of white male leadership in this office were not by accident, but by the very design of white supremacy allied with its good friends, misogyny, and the cis-hetero patriarchy. Protesting for racial justice has been met with the full force of a militarized police state while attempting to overthrow democracy and the United States government has been met with minimal resistance and a total lack of accountability. Everyone knows what would have happened had it been people of color attempting to occupy the United States Capitol through force. The events of this past week have put the injustices of white supremacist culture on full display for all to see. President-elect Joe Biden, in his remarks as the pandemonium was unfolding in the United States Capitol, stated, "Let me be very clear. The scenes of chaos at the Capitol do not reflect a true America, do not represent who we are. What we're seeing are a small number of extremists dedicated to lawlessness." He continued later in his remarks, "As I said, America is about honesty, decency, respect, tolerance. That's who we are. That's who we've always been." While I agree with him that the scenes of chaos at the Capitol perhaps do not reflect a true America, no serious student of history could argue that what we witnessed was not a part of what America is and has been for the entirety of its existence. We are a nation founded on soil bloodied by a genocide of the indigenous people of this land and by the legacies of chattel slavery. We are a country in which women were prohibited from voting for more than half of its existence. Many Black, Indigenous, and Asian American women, of course, had to wait even decades longer to be able to cast a vote. We are a country where lynching mobs ruled, unchecked by the government for generations. We are a country where black people in this country had to fight and offer up their own basic civil rights. We are a country where the government remained silent while generations of gay men were being erased. We are a country where civil rights protections for people with disabilities didn't even exist until 1990. We are told America is about honor, decency, respect, tolerance. That's who we are. That's who we've always been. But that is simply not true. Our country has been almost continually at war. It is very profitable, after all, since its inception. It was but 2 administrations ago that we launched a war on the people of Iraq and Afghanistan and created a vacuum for the largest global terrorist network to emerge and usher in another chapter of global violence. The wars on Iraq and Afghanistan alone killed between 500,000 and 1 million people. Are we so quick to forget those wars were also predicated upon lies and deceptions by this nation's political leaders? What about Vietnam, the Trail of Tears, and the massacre at Wounded Knee? Today, we are quickly nearing 400,000 deaths from a pandemic that has been incompetently managed from its very beginning by our political leaders. These deaths have, not surprisingly, disproportionately impacted Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities. Now, the 117th Congress will be the most diverse in history, with 124 members who are people of color, or 28.5%. But people of color are still woefully underrepresented. Despite the passing of almost 2.5 centuries, women in this country only hold 26 of the 100 seats in the Senate and 122 of the 435 seats in the House of Representatives. There is 1 bisexual and 1 lesbian member of the Senate and only 9 LGBT community members in the House of Representatives. There are presently no elected members of Congress who are openly transgender. Simply put, Congress does not reflect the diversity of the United States, and that is by white supremacist design. It could be designed otherwise. Now, yes, progress has been made, but only by the great struggles and sacrifices of oppressed peoples in our society. We should be erecting monuments all over this country to remind us of these sacrifices and of our aspirations as a free people. Taking down the terrorizing monuments to racism and war and destruction is not enough. We cannot dismantle white supremacy, the cis-heteropatriarchy, or other related systems, structures, and cultures of oppression like ableism, ageism, classism, xenophobia, economic injustice, prison industrial complex, colonialism, militarism, and speciesism until we get real about the history of this country and the impact of that history on all of us who are now here. Now, sure, it may feel good to imagine that what happened this past week was an abnormality in American life. But maladies in the social, institutional, and cultural life of this nation cannot be properly treated if they are not properly diagnosed. We have to stop pretending that these life-denying realities are not also a part of the American experience. We have to recognize that as a nation, historical traumas have become intergenerational traumas for communities who have experienced systematic oppression and state-sanctioned violence, deprivation, and neglect. We are all living with these realities, though not all to the same degree. And we are living with the structures and institutions that still maintain inequality, injustice, and violence. We cannot heal as a nation, as a people, until we grapple with these legacies of trauma, these structures and institutions of inequality and violence, and the ways that economic resources are hoarded and distributed in our society. And despite all of these challenges, I refuse to be diminished by the uncertainties and the challenges that are before us as a people. Hope is on the horizon, even if it does not feel immediately present or always accessible in the moment. As people of liberal faith, we are called to hold on to hope, to follow the rays of its light into the distant future. We are also called to study history, to listen to the voices and perspectives of those who have been marginalized and oppressed, and to dispel the illusions others offer and we sometimes offer ourselves to keep us from the expansiveness of truth. We are called as a people of liberal faith not to venture out alone, but with the extraordinary power of beloved community. Hope is a transcending reality that's continually inviting us to make our way through the ugliness, suffering, and oppressions of this world to that brighter future for all. Without hope, we're rendered ineffectual and bound to circumstance. Let us find hope within ourselves, in each other, in our beloved community, in our liberal faith, in the struggles for liberation, in those ancestors who came before us, and in the beauty of our world at this beginning of a new year. May we be so determined. Amen, and blessed be.
We are a community that works for more than ourselves. Today, we pledge 50% of our offering to the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. The very beginnings of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, SCLC, can be traced back to the Montgomery bus boycott. In the spirit of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the SCLC is renewing its commitment to bring about the promise of one nation under God, indivisible, together with the commitment to activate the strength of love within the community of humankind. Their programs feed the homeless, provide nonviolence training, heighten awareness of human trafficking, and more. Thank you for your generous support. Half of our offering this morning will go to the SCLC, so please give generously. We also encourage you to give to the general fund for our church. We are not worshiping in our building, nor can any of the rooms on our campus be used by the many groups that have met there for years. So, if you are able, and some of you are not, please give. Thank you for your generous support. There are 3 ways to give: over text, through our website, or by mailing a check. Using your smartphone, text 844-982-0209 with the donation amount and the code for where the funds will be posted. A brief registration form will be sent to you if this is your first time giving in this manner, but it is very simple each time afterwards. To make a generous congregation contribution, use code GCC or use the QR code that you see on your screen. On our website, you can make a one-time donation or set up recurring payments for your pledge or for another purpose. Your giving makes a big difference.
Woke up to a world that is changing. Looking out the window got me wondering lately, will we be okay? Will we be okay? One day I can feel the sun shining. Next day a bullet can leave a mama crying. Will she be okay? Will she be okay? Tell me, will we be okay? Will she be okay? Life is taking everything that I have just to survive. I got $25 in my pocket, and I think another 10 in my glove compartment. I'm trying so bad not to cry, but it's hard to stop it. But you say all of my needs, you promise you got it. So I'm gonna be okay. I'm gonna be okay. Okay, okay. See, I gotta remember that my love is bigger than any battle I'll ever face. So I'm gonna be okay. Why do we hate one another when love is the most beautiful color? It takes away the gray. Love is beautiful. It makes everything okay. Everything's gonna be okay. Where is the American dream? If only 1% knows what it means to really be okay. Do you know what it means to be? Tell me, is that okay? Life is taking everything that I have just to survive. I got $25 in my pocket, and I think another 10 in my glove compartment. I'm trying so bad not to cry, but it's hard to stop it. But you say all of my needs, you promise you got it. So I'm gonna be okay. I'm gonna be okay. Okay, okay. See, I gotta remember that my love is bigger than any battle I'll ever face. So I'm gonna be okay. See, our love is great. This season of pain, it won't last always. Life is taking everything that I have just to survive. You've got $25 $10 in your pocket, and you think another 10 in your glove compartment. But that family with no food would trade places with you. Give thanks and don't forget how you got it, and you're gonna be okay.
You gon' be okay.
We gon' be okay.
Okay.
Okay, okay. See, I gotta remember that my love is bigger than any battle I'll ever face. So I'm gonna be okay.
I'm gonna be okay.
We gon' be okay.
We gon' be okay.
You gon' be okay.
You gon' be okay.
Be okay. Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night. If you cannot sing like angels, if you cannot speak before thousands, you can give from deep within you. You can change the world with your love. Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night. Love will guide us. Love will guide us through the hard night.
Thank you for joining us in worship this morning. May you go in peace. May you hold fast to that which is good. May you strengthen the faint of heart, support the weak, help the afflicted, honor all beings. May you enter this day with a blessing, and may you be a blessing.